Cinema has always promised transformation. We step into a dark room, and for a moment, we agree to surrender our logic, our comfort, even our sense of time. But what happens when a film doesn't just transport us, but rewires something deep inside? There are films that leave a mark, and then there are films that leave wounds, not metaphorical ones, but real, measurable psychological aftershocks. In the past decades, scattered across theaters and VHS shelves, a handful of films have been quietly blamed for causing seizures, paranoia, chronic insomnia, and in rare cases, irreversible behavioral shifts. And these weren't underground bootlegs or art house experiments. Some were mainstream releases, promoted with glossy posters and catchy taglines, until reports started flooding in audiences collapsing in cinemas, emergency lines jammed with frantic calls, viewers claiming they were not the same after watching. The response from studios? Swift and surgical, limited runs, quiet withdrawals, press blackouts. Some filmmakers embraced the controversy, others denied everything. But behind the curtains, one truth remained. These films touch something volatile in the human mind. Tonight, we're peeling back that curtain. These aren't your typical disturbing movies. These are films linked directly or mysteriously to documented psychological side effects. Some have become cult legends. Others remain buried, intentionally forgotten. But all share one thing. They didn't just haunt audiences, they changed them. So ask yourself this. What if a film doesn't just stay with you but alters something inside you? These weren't just movies. They were events, disturbances, quiet detonations that left audiences not thrilled, but altered. Some triggered panic, others bred obsession. A few were buried intentionally, but all, in their own way, crossed a line between storytelling and psychological intrusion. Maybe that's what cinema is ultimately capable of, not just reflection, but infection. The ability to insert something under the skin, into the subconscious, and leave it there, twitching. So now we ask you, which of these films left a mark on you? Was there a moment, a frame, a sound that never quite let go? Drop your thoughts in the comments. We read everything. And if you want us to keep digging into the films that didn't just entertain but disturbed, subscribe, like, and stay close. The projector never really turns off here. Salo, or the 120 Days of Sodom, 1975. You were never supposed to see this. Pier Paolo Pasolini's Salo is one of the most controversial and psychologically damaging films ever made. A loose adaptation of Marquis de Sade's writings, the film depicts the systematic dehumanization and torture of young captives by fascist elites. But Salo isn't exploitative, it's a political allegory, a statement, a weapon, and that's what makes it more terrifying. Many theaters refused to screen it. Some countries banned it outright. But those who did see it reported deep, lasting discomfort. Not because of what's shown, though that's horrifying, but because of how coldly it's presented. Clinical, detached, unflinching. The lack of traditional horror tropes makes the brutality more real, more unavoidable. Some viewers claim the film triggered depressive episodes. Others felt emotionally numb for days. One academic famously refused to include it in any curriculum, not out of moral protest, but because he feared the psychic residue it left behind. Is there such a thing as a film that simply shouldn't be watched? The Blair Witch Project, 1999. Belief is the most dangerous special effect. When The Blair Witch Project was released, it wasn't just a movie, it was a myth. Marketed as real found footage, it blurred the line between fiction and documentary so effectively that some early audiences genuinely believed the events were true. Missing posters for the actors were circulated. Fake police reports were uploaded. The website supporting the hoax became one of the internet's first viral campaigns. And the impact? Unexpected. Multiple viewers reported panic attacks in theaters. The shaky handheld footage triggered motion sickness. But more than that, the film sparked real fear. Some viewers reported insomnia. Others claimed to hear sounds from the woods days after watching. One man said he became irrationally afraid of trees. Critics dismissed it as overhype, but the reaction was visceral. It wasn't what the film showed, it was what it implied. It rewired how we experienced horror, how we defined what was real. Is belief the scariest special effect of all? Irreversible, 2002. Some films don't ask for your attention, they take it by force. Gaspar Noé's Irreversible opens with a murder, ends with peace, and unfolds entirely in reverse. But what it's most infamous for is what happens in the middle, a nearly 10-minute-long assault scene, shot in one unbroken take, with no music, no cutaways, and no mercy. Audiences at Cannes walked out en masse. Some fainted, Others vomited. One critic called it the cinematic equivalent of staring into the sun until your eyes bleed. But what disturbed people wasn't just the content, it was the film's unrelenting style. Noé weaponized the camera, using low-frequency sound waves designed to induce anxiety. Many viewers reported physical symptoms, headaches, nausea, chest tightness. The narrative structure only worsened the effect. Watching trauma unfold backward robbed viewers of catharsis. There was no build-up, no explanation, only aftermath first, and then a brutal rewind into the moment that caused it. Can a film hijack your body just as much as your mind? Funny Games, 1997 over 2007. What if the villain isn't in the film but behind the camera? Michael Haneke's Funny Games was never meant to entertain. In fact, it openly hates the audience. Both the original 1997 Austrian version and the 2007 American shot-for-shot remake assault not just the characters, but the viewer's expectations. It's a home invasion film where the invaders talk to the camera, rewind reality, and question our willingness to consume violence. Audiences left furious, not scared furious. Walkouts were common. Some claimed nausea, not from gore, but from the emotional manipulation. One critic described the film as cinematic gaslighting. Haneke himself said it was a provocation, a mirror held up to voyeurism, meant to make viewers feel complicit. But it went further than that. Some viewers reported a loss of trust, not in film, but in narrative itself. The idea that a story could break its own rules and punish you for watching it left a lasting sense of dread. What happens when the villain is the director and you're the real target? The Ring, 2002 US remake. The curse wasn't just in the tape, it spread to the audience. Gore Verbinski's The Ring, a remake of the Japanese Ringu, became a box office hit, but its influence extended far beyond cinemas. Inspired by viral mythology, the film centered around a videotape that kills anyone who watches it. But after its release, reality began to blur. Reports emerged of VHS tapes being anonymously left on doorsteps. Some viewers claimed their televisions turned on by themselves. One teenage girl reportedly refused to use screens for a month, convinced she was marked. While many dismissed this as marketing-induced hysteria, others weren't so sure. Urban legends sprang up, tying the film to sudden deaths, seizures, and even suicides, though no cases were ever confirmed. What made The Ring unique wasn't just its story, it was its mimicry of transmission. It felt like watching the film might actually trigger something, a creeping paranoia, a mental echo. Can a film become self-aware of how it's watched? The Poughkeepsie tapes, 2007. What if the footage felt too real? Because it was meant to. The Poughkeepsie tapes was shelved for years, not because of technical issues, but because test audiences reportedly couldn't handle it. Marketed as a found footage horror film, it presents itself as a mockumentary chronicling the discovery of hundreds of VHS tapes left behind by a sadistic serial killer. But it didn't feel like fiction. The film's grainy visuals, emotionless narration, and flat, clinical style created a disarming realism. Many viewers mistook it for an actual documentary. Online debates swirled, was this real? Were these actual tapes? The visceral discomfort went beyond normal horror reactions. Some reported nausea, paranoia, even bouts of insomnia. A few users claimed they felt violated just watching it. Rumors spread that MGM pulled the film from theatrical release after internal screenings raised red flags. It wasn't officially released until years later quietly, and without fanfare. To this day, it's not just the imagery that disturbs, but the emotional void that surrounds it. When horror loses its artifice, does it become psychological contamination? Inland Empire, 2006. David Lynch didn't just make a film, he made a maze. Shot on digital video over 3 years without a traditional script, Inland Empire is perhaps Lynch's most enigmatic and psychologically aggressive work. Laura Dern plays an actress whose identity unravels across multiple timelines, alternate realities, and nightmarish loops. Logic doesn't apply. Neither does chronology. The film is 3 hours of descending into someone else's madness and maybe your own. Upon release, some audiences walked out, others sat in silence, unable to process what they'd just seen. Several reported sensory overload, dissociation, and feelings of dread that lingered for days. One viewer reportedly called it a breakdown on film. Even Lynch himself, when asked what the film meant, replied cryptically, "You'll know if you're meant to." For many, the film functions less like a story and more like a virus infecting thought patterns. creating visual echoes that return uninvited. Is Inland Empire art, madness, or both? Perfect Blue, 1997. Animation isn't supposed to stalk you. Satoshi Kon's Perfect Blue shattered preconceptions about what anime could be. This wasn't a fantasy, a love story, or even a traditional thriller. It was a descent into fractured identity, voyeurism, and psychological disintegration. Following a pop idol who tries to become a serious actress, the film blurs the line between performance and reality until neither character nor viewer can tell what's real anymore. At early screenings, viewers reported feeling lost, dizzy, even disassociated. Kon's layered narrative cutting rapidly between hallucination, memory, and present induces a kind of cognitive vertigo. For some, it didn't stop when the credits rolled. Forums erupted with stories of parasocial obsession, dreams of being watched, and feeling leaked into by the film. Critics praised Perfect Blue for its artistry, but few commented on its psychic aftertaste. Darren Aronofsky, who acquired the remake rights, later borrowed its most disturbing scene for Requiem for a Dream, a nod to its power. Can a film fracture your sense of reality just by watching? Threads, 1984. Not horror, just reality without mercy. Threads was a BBC television film, not a theatrical release, not promoted with fanfare, and yet it may be one of the most psychologically devastating films ever broadcast. It doesn't depict ghosts, demons, or serial killers. It depicts nuclear war. And not the Hollywood version, but a plausible, unflinching descent into societal collapse and human extinction. Set in Sheffield, Threads presents, in documentary realism, what would happen if the Cold War went hot. There are no heroes, no salvation, just ash, blindness, starvation, and regression. Audiences in 1984 were completely unprepared. After its premiere, BBC hotlines were overwhelmed. Teachers requested it be banned from classrooms. Some viewers reported depressive symptoms that lasted weeks. One psychiatrist later described it as cinematic post-traumatic stress. The BBC, alarmed by the reaction, buried Threads for decades. It was only rediscovered in the streaming era, where it traumatized a new generation. Still today, many who watch it say, "I wish I hadn't." Should a film that tells the truth ever be hidden? Antrum, the deadliest film ever made. 2018. What if watching the film is the curse? Antrum bills itself as a lost 1,970 seconds horror movie, recently rediscovered and allegedly cursed. The film's fictional backstory claims that everyone who screens it dies mysteriously. The marketing leaned in, calling it the deadliest film ever made. Most saw it as a gimmick, until the rumors began. Screenings at niche festivals were reportedly followed by bizarre accidents. A projectionist's unexplained seizure, a power outage that halted the film mid-reel, a fire in a nearby hotel. Though none were officially linked to Antrum, the mounting coincidences led to an urban legend that gained online traction fast. As a film, Antrum is intentionally disjointed, grainy visuals, reverse chants, and disturbing subliminal frames buried in its runtime. But its real power may lie in suggestion. Dozens of viewers claim insomnia and nightmares after watching. Some reported seeing symbols from the film in real life. Others said nothing at all, but deleted the film from their libraries quietly, without explanation. Can fear become real if you believe hard enough? The Exorcist, 1973. Some films generate fear. The Exorcist generated ambulances. Upon its release in 1973, William Friedkin's The Exorcist became more than a horror film. It became a national event. But what made headlines wasn't just the pea soup and profanity, it was the audiences. At various theaters across the US, viewers fainted, vomited, or fled. Paramedics were reportedly stationed outside cinemas in major cities. One woman claimed she suffered a miscarriage during a screening. Lawsuits were filed. Evangelical groups declared it the devil's tool. Yet, lines wrapped around blocks. What caused this mass hysteria? Was it the sound design using animal noises layered with religious chants, the grotesque prosthetics, or the fact that deep down, The Exorcist asks something terrifying? What if evil isn't just metaphorical? Though later horror films were bloodier, none reproduced the same scale of psychological disruption, and that legacy has endured. Audiences today still report unease that lingers long after. Was The Exorcist a supernatural tale, or did it awaken something primal we weren't meant to touch? Come and See, 1985. You don't watch Come and See. you survive it. Elim Klimov's Soviet war film, Come and See, is widely regarded as one of the most harrowing depictions of war ever put on screen. But what many don't realize is that the trauma didn't end when the cameras stopped rolling or even when the credits rolled. Filmed using real ammunition and live explosives, the psychological toll on its young lead actor, Alexei Kravchenko, was severe. Klimov allegedly hypnotized the boy before emotionally intense scenes to prevent long-term damage. Even so, Kravchenko claimed he aged several years mentally during the production. And viewers? They weren't spared either. Reports from initial screenings noted multiple walkouts, especially during the third act, a feverish descent into human atrocity and existential collapse. The film's visual and auditory barrage gunfire, screams, oppressive silence has left many viewers physically shaken. Nightmares, vomiting, and full-blown anxiety attacks have been attributed to its viewing. Some call it an anti-war masterpiece. Others call it psychological warfare. Can truth be so powerful that it leaves permanent scars? Requiem for a Dream, 2000. It wasn't horror, it was punishment. Darren Aronofsky's Requiem for a Dream wasn't sold as a horror movie, but few horror films have scarred audiences so deeply. Chronicling the descent of 4 individuals into drug addiction and delusion, the film is a relentless assault on the senses. Fast-cut editing, pulsing sound design, and hyper-real close-ups create a sense of spiraling doom. Audiences left screenings in stunned silence. Reports of panic attacks and emotional breakdowns weren't uncommon. One cinema in Toronto allegedly kept tissues and water near exits after multiple viewers fainted during the final 15 minutes. Unlike other drug dramas, Requiem doesn't offer redemption, only deterioration, decay, and despair. The film has since been studied in psychology classes and addiction recovery programs, not for education, but as a trigger warning. Even now, it remains one of the few mainstream films audiences openly refuse to rewatch. Many claim they felt mentally broken after the first viewing. Was Requiem a cinematic masterpiece or a form of emotional violence with artistic credentials? Noroi, The Curse, 2005. Some films scare you. Noroi makes you feel contaminated. This Japanese found footage film begins like a typical paranormal documentary, but it spirals into something far more insidious. Directed by Koji Shiraishi, Noroi follows a journalist investigating supernatural phenomena, eventually unearthing a curse tied to ancient rituals, missing children, and a woman with unsettling psychic abilities. What sets Noroi apart isn't jump scares, it's unease. Every shot lingers too long. Every silence feels loaded. The editing is deliberately fractured, creating a rhythm that disorients the viewer. By the film's final act, many viewers report physical symptoms: nausea, headaches, vertigo. Online forums became archives of bizarre accounts, people dreaming of the film, hearing static after watching, or feeling followed for days. For years, Noroi was nearly impossible to find legally outside Japan, adding to its mystique. Bootleg copies circulated like forbidden artifacts. Today, it's considered a masterclass in dread, but some still warn others not to watch it alone. Can atmosphere itself become a psychological weapon? Begotten, 1989. This wasn't a film. It was a ritual. Begotten, released in 1989, looked like it had been dug up from the subconscious of a dying god. Shot entirely in grainy black and white, the film features no dialogue, no traditional narrative, and no comfort. Instead, it offers a primal, nightmarish sequence where a deity disembowels itself, a mother figure rises from the gore, and a child god is born, only to be destroyed again. Married to its surreal visuals was a suffocating atmosphere, raw, repetitive, and rhythmically violent. Director Elias Merhige used painstaking image degradation to create a flickering, decayed aesthetic. The film's few screenings resulted in walkouts, fainting, and at least one reported panic attack. Word of mouth dubbed it a film that hates the viewer, a cinematic curse rather than a story. Over the years, Begotten has gained cult notoriety. Critics debate whether it's a work of genius or pure nihilism. It's studied in film schools, whispered about on forums, and avoided by many who claim the imagery gets stuck in the mind. Even those who finish it often say the same thing. It feels like something entered through your eyes and stayed inside. Is Begotten simply avant-garde horror, or was it designed to bypass reason and speak directly to trauma? Fire in the Sky, 1993. Some traumas can't be explained because they might not be fiction. Based on the real-life account of Travis Walton, Fire in the Sky dramatizes one of the most famous alien abduction stories in American history. But unlike most sci-fi thrillers, this film didn't leave viewers awed, it left them shaken. What sets Fire in the Sky apart isn't its story, it's how it tells it. The abduction scene, introduced late in the film, is a surreal nightmare of body horror, claustrophobia, and surgical violation. It's also far more graphic and disorienting than anything the rest of the film prepares you for. That tonal shift, combined with the knowledge that it was based on true events, created a feedback loop of fear. Viewers reported sleeplessness, recurring nightmares, and unexplained anxiety long after viewing. Even decades later, the abduction sequence remains infamous in online forums, not for jump scares, but for its uncanny emotional intrusion. Some UFO believers claim the film activated memories. Others say it opened them to experiences they wish they could unsee. When trauma is delivered through a lens of supposed truth, does it become something else entirely?